Welcome to the FounderVideo Podcast, an interview series bringing you the latest and greatest info on B2B marketing, revenue operations, and go-to-market strategy from respected experts. Here is your host, Will Martin.
So we are here for the 22nd episode of the FounderVideo Podcast. Today we have Gabe Lullo, or how, I don't know if I'm getting that right, but
It's
CEO of
Lullo
Alleyoop.
for us in the U.S. Yeah, but I know you speak Spanish too, so Lullo is something that we hear a lot.
Yeah, Lullo is, yeah. So CEO of Alleyoop, a lot of insights that we're going to talk about today, especially, Alleyoop, for those that don't know, it's a sales development agency and has worked with really big names in the industry. So we'll be talking about that as well as your background. And yeah, let's get started with that, I guess, right? Like, who is Gabe Lullo? And, I know you ran your own company for almost or more than a decade before you became head of people ops. That was your first role at Alleyoop. What happened there, and what should people know about that part of your life that in order to understand who you are and what you do today?
Yeah, well, first off, Will, I'm a massive fan of yours. I see you all over my LinkedIn feed. You are doing some amazing stuff, and I was excited to be asked to be on your podcast. So thanks so much for having me.
Appreciate that.
Kate, of course. Simply, I came out of school right after 9/11. I was destined to be, in the financial business. That's where my interns were. I was working in New York City, working for different financial firms. And then there was a job freeze right at that time of the year, right? Because of obviously the tragedy of 9/11. So I was really scrambling to look for what I wanted to do next. And a good friend of mine, I grew up with him. His dad was in the staffing business, and I started doing some work with him, and I started my own business. He was my business partner. He helped me fund the company, and I was doing recruitment and staffing, and also then it spawned into a training company where I was training salespeople. And I was on the road. In my early 20s, I was on the road flying to different cities pretty much every single week. And it was great. I loved doing it. But then, I settled down, got married, and had my daughter, was born. And she, obviously things change when that happens. And I'm like, you know what? I need to be here, right? I want to find something inside sales, remote, or something that allowed me to not have to travel. And I found what was then called Inside Sales Team, which is now called Alleyoop. And it was interesting. They were getting involved in the SDR agency space. They did full cycle sales as a service, and they were looking at the SDR space. And that's where I came into this company over a decade ago and grew throughout the company. I did leave for a couple of years to go run a SaaS business, which was awesome. But then I was asked to come back by the owners here to run the company as CEO. So that's been my 23-year journey in less than a minute.
Yeah, that was pretty short. I would urge you to expand more on that because I'm sure there were a lot of learnings, right? Tell us about that, right? Like an entire decade in your 20s building a sales development company, like training sales reps and, well, staffing and recruiting, but like training, which is, in and of itself, the core of growing a services company, right? So what did you learn there that is being so useful today as the CEO of Alleyoop?
Well, people is our product. And it's interesting because when you're in professional services, right, and you come from other industries like SaaS, or you come from, any type of product driven businesses, you have to have a different look at things. And, we don't have an algorithm. We don't have a proprietary software. We don't have a widget. I don't have inventory, being shipped out. The people is our product, and finding good people. And that's where that recruitment starts blending in here. People always ask me, like, what do you do as CEO? I really just find really good people and put them in a room and put them in a company to work for and do great things. So I think the big learning experience for us is to be fanatical about finding recruitment, and then also be fanatical about enabling them and investing in them. And just hiring them is not the right answer. Is hiring them and then pouring into them, investing in them. And a mentor of mine taught me a long time ago, because I did that for a while, and then I had some teams that quit, and it really hit my morale. It really was hard to man, what am I doing? I'm doing the wrong thing. Everyone I was working with doesn't, quit. And I'm still, in my early 20s when I said this. And he's like, hey, listen, you need to invest in people like they'll last and work with you forever, but you need to expect them to quit tomorrow. And that's the hardest thing to think about and do, but that's how you have to operate. You have to pour into people, invest in them, support them, be their cheerleader, like they're going to be with you forever, but know that, hey, there are opportunities where they're going to leave and do other things. And you have to be okay with that. And so we figured out how to do that without going nuts. So that's a little bit about what I learned.
How did you figure that out? What are because it's such a complex thing, right? Like, and at the end of the day, it's the bottleneck for many companies, even in SaaS at this point, right? Because the go-to-market of SaaS, which is the whole thing. Most people think, oh, SaaS, there's no delivery. It's not like services. You don't need to. But there's always customer support. There's onboarding. There's implementation. There's all that stuff, customer success, right? But again, it all comes down to people, process, and technology, right? As you guys say. So how, what were those things that you figured out that help you? Because sure, that is a core principle, right? Like you need to treat people as if they would work with you forever, but at the same time as if they would quit tomorrow. What are other pillars, this especially you're nailing down, today at Alleyoop in terms of onboarding the talent, getting them equipped or activated? I compare this a lot to acquisition of clients, right? Acquisition of talent and acquisition of clients. You need to activate clients and onboard them properly so that success can happen. It's the same thing with people, right? So what are the core things that you're looking or that you have optimized and that you're always trying to have an eye on in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, and you nailed it, right? It's the onboarding of customers, and you have to be fanatical about that. But it's the qualification piece, right? So just saying yes to everyone just to generate revenue is a philosophy. And if you're bootstrapping and if you're trying to do something brand new, you may be forced to do that more than you want to, right? Just to get revenue into the door when you're starting off. But you have to have a lot more filters in place as you grow and scale in order to bring on the right customer. And you have to be the same about qualifying your customers when it comes to qualifying your staff. And so what we've been able to figure out is our recruitment engine is multifaceted. We have hundreds of people applying every single month. We hire single digits every month. And the reason why we have really figured out the way in which to attract and retain good people is we put them through a series of interviews. Now, we're not the company that interviews for 4 months and, takes people, down this line of no return. We never want to be that way. But we do have a very systematic way of putting people through a series of interviews, and we're very upfront about it. We actually have our head of recruitment has a video that we send in the application process, taking them through who we are, what we do, our storyline, our entire business with resources, and exactly what to expect in the entire interview process if they get to the end. And so they're knowing what to expect day one if they choose to go down that interview process. And most do, and most love that. But on the flip side, we then take them through that process so we know we're truly qualifying the best candidate, and which gives them hopefully the right track to run on when they're here, and then we can invest in them at that point.
Interesting. Love that. What was or is, I guess, your relationship with Stephen, if I'm pronouncing that right, the founder of Alleyoop, right?
Yeah.
That led you to become CEO. Well, and in the first place to join as head of people operations, or was something like completely different or unrelated that led you to it?
Yeah, I mean, Steve Hayes is our founder and owner, and he was the CEO when I was introduced to the company. I remember meeting him in my interview process, and I just really gravitated to him. I think he's one of the best salespeople in the world. He, would just look me in the eyes and is like, hey, this is how it is. He's no nonsense, very direct, not in an arrogant way, but in a way in which this is what he believes in. And it really, allowed me to buy into that vision, and it's been an amazing whirlwind. But yeah, he's been always a supporter. He's an ideas guy. He'll tell you. I'm more of an executioner. I come up with cool ideas, but he comes up with much cooler ideas. And I'm the one that, he passes that idea to. For the 10 that he comes up with, we pick 2 and then we run with it. And I get it across the finish line. And that's, really how our relationship has been over the last 10 years. And it's good. So I compliment him in ways that he doesn't execute some of the things because he knows he's in that laboratory of thinking of things. And on the flip side, he comes up with stuff that I would never be able to come up with. And it's a really good partnership.
How did you guys meet? I guess how did it start?
Yeah, it's funny. It's just literally through a friend. A friend of mine was working for him, and he was actually in one of my trainings. So this gentleman was signed up for one of my trainings. I was teaching sales, And he's like, hey, you really remind me of a guy that I work for. And I said, oh yeah, tell me more. And he started telling me about the business. And I said, wow, that's really interesting. And he actually introduced the two of us, and that's how we met. So it was really through straight up networking and someone seeing him and me at very different parts of our life and different businesses, and introduced the two of us, and what happened from there.
Interesting. Yeah. It's always the serendipity, right? Like it's never,
Yeah.
it's always just something that happens casually and then it changes your life or whatever. I've
Yeah,
seen
and
it many
it's
times.
I always say timing is everything in business, right? And we say that a lot. It's a cliche, but it really is so important, especially in our world, right? Sales development. You all want meetings, we all want leads, we all want to talk to the right people, but if the timing isn't right, it doesn't work out no matter what. You know what I mean? So it's like I was looking for something different. It was introduced to me, but it could have been something else. Maybe it was something else that because I was just open at that point. So you have to be open-minded, and then those things start coming up, and then you have those opportunities and those doors start opening up, and that's absolutely what happened.
Yep, totally. Always open-minded. Always.
Yeah.
You got to be in constant doubt of your ideas too, in a way, to make sure they're always
I mean,
the right ones.
especially in this day and age, right? I mean, there's so many new tools, so many new tech, so many new trends. So there's two things, right? Be open-minded, but be skeptical, right? So I take cold calls. I took one this morning. Like someone calls me, I'm going to take the call if I'm available. I'm one of those. I'm in the cold calling business, so I like to hear what other people are doing. Maybe I'll recruit them, right? Maybe that's my next SDR. I don't know. But I'm always open-minded, but I always, I'm optimistically, cautious, right? We test everything. So if someone comes to me and says, hey, I have this greatest, latest, coolest tech, great, let's put it to the test and let's see, if it's effective. And if it's effective, then let's engage. But we gotta test it out.
Yep, totally. On that note, you mentioned the timing. Timing is so. What's your take on the current landscape of intent data and how useful you've seen it be in your sales development processes as a global leader in the space, working with, we'll talk about that later, right? What you learn from working with so many big companies, but intent data, like, does it actually, I'm really skeptical with that specifically, just with most sales tech in general too, because I think other tools do more of the same, just in a different way. But yeah, what's your take on that? I know you know the space like pretty in depth, so.
Yeah, it's not a silver bullet, but if I have triggers that are telling me things that's going to allow me to be armed with a more sophisticated message and conversation because of it, I'm going to use it. A lot of people, are looking for the silver bullet. They're looking for, the home run at every hit. And if you're feeling that intent data is going to be a home run on every hit, that's not the case. You still have to have a traditional outbound approach, let's call it traditional, to those types of triggers. But if it's a straight cold list with just names and phone numbers, or if there's intent that's behind and giving me data points that will allow me to have a better message, I'd rather pick that for sure. But to your point, there's a lot of tools out there that are just the same thing packaged in a different way. And, there's really expensive tools that are packaged in ways that you can get practically the same thing for a lot less expensive, and it's the same thing. But yeah, for me, I would like to have triggering tools or intent data versus just a straight cold list. But I think the approach that people are having is, oh, this is just fish in the barrel, and they're just going to say yes because they have intent. That's not the case. It'll help, but it's not going to, be a home run every time.
Do you want to get into the weeds of this? Like where
Yeah.
the data comes from, what it actually means? Is it actually accurate?
Yeah. So what we do is we have various, we don't have one data partner. A lot of companies just use one. So we're a very large data usage company. And so we have multiple data partners that we're working with. And when we look at that, we definitely are prioritizing based on intent and whatever those triggers are. It's based on, specifically the client themselves. So depending on what their ICP is and what different things are important to that specific client is how we would categorize the intent. Once we have that, we would then build the lists from there and then enrich that on a daily basis to our SDRs who are making emails and calls across that data. Another thing that we do is very different is we actually score our own data. So we score the leads on reachability. We score the leads on bad data. We not only just say bad data, we determine exactly why it is bad data. And then we actually take that exhaust, if you will, and send it back to our data providers with those notes so they can then take that information and enrich it. They have research on demand teams that are fulfilling and backfilling that bad data with new data. And then we repopulate it to our teams. So that's essentially how we do it now, and how we take, again, our exhaust and hopefully recycle it and enrich it to be more effective for our reps.
Interesting. The question was more so like, how the entire landscape works just in general, like how data providers get the data, how, how to estimate at least whether it could be accurate or not, what use cases among Alleyoop you've seen for the usage of such data that are working best. Like,
I mean, data is really it's a commodity at this point, and we're noticing that there's any data provider that you work with, and they're all good, but at the end of the day, there's about 20 to 30% of data that is currently just not usable, right? And so when we look at phone numbers, when we look at emails, when we look at titles, when we look at personas, when we look at where the prospects are located, we kind of chalk that up. And so we are, again, to your point, we are sourcing the data from where everyone else is sourcing it, but then we are scoring it based on our own parameters, and then using those new scored lists as our own data lists for all of our campaigns. So when an SDR team is built and there's an ICP that is specific to that prospect, to that client that we're representing, we are going to use our scored data if the ICP has been called upon before to increase the connection rates and the conversation rates.
Solid process right there, doing your own scoring and whatnot. This is definitely needed.
This podcast is brought to you by FounderVideo. We'll cut your LinkedIn ads costs by at least 50% with natural-looking creatives that prospects actually want to consume. Just have an expert in your C-suite show up to a 90-minute interview once a month and let us take care of the rest. Turn LinkedIn ads from an accepted line item expense into a scalable revenue channel that fits into your go-to-market strategy.
You've worked with, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong here, ZoomInfo, Cisco, Peloton, AWS, Adobe, Sendozo, Outreach. Like, it's a good roster, right? So I guess, what did you learn working with these companies or having them as a client, as a CEO? Like, I mean, I don't know how deeply involved you are in the ops and like actually dealing with the client. I'm sure you are in some shape or form, but again, like, it's not the usual client roster for every agency out there, of course. What, like, biggest lessons from that? Especially ZoomInfo. I know you have a close relationship with Henry, if I'm not mistaken. So,
yeah, I mean, Henry was in the rotation when we started our partnership. They were then called Discover Org, and he was taking demos from our SDRs. It's interesting. The gentleman who is running the entire SDR department at ZoomInfo, a guy named Brian Vidal, was here, and he actually made the first cold calls for us and was the head of that campaign for quite some time, and then was eventually hired by ZoomInfo directly. So one of the uniqueness about our model in our agency, collaboration with our clients, is our reps are hireable. There's really two types of companies that come to us. Ones that never want to run an SDR team. They've done it before. They don't want to do it again. It's too much for them. It's too expensive. It's too much of a headache. They just want to outsource, right? That's their primary mission into perpetuity. And we accept those companies and welcome them, and we run awesome campaigns for them. On the flip side, there's others that are like again, ZoomInfo. They came to us with the idea of starting an SDR team, and they were very, very small at that point. And who would have known that they would have turned into the mammoth company they are today? That was actually a Steve decision, who was having that partnership and starting that partnership. But we want all of our companies to have that type of success level, and many have. Long story short, though, is we were literally building out a SDR team for them from scratch. And what was interesting about it is when we were, collaborating, working with them, we learned a lot, and they learned a lot, and we shared best practices, and then they started building their own teams. So again, going back to my original point, one of the things that we do here is our clients can hire our SDRs and convert them into their own internal team on their payroll. Because we all know, many SDRs don't want to be an SDR forever, right? Some of them want to go to become AEs, we're going to ops, we're going to marketing, and do other functions, but a lot of them want to go into that, seller mode and that closer mode, and they start an SDR. Well, our clients can actually use our SDRs to be on their SDR campaign and then hire them. And that's really, really a huge advantage for us. So what we learned, to go back to your original question with working all these massive brands, is that you got to believe in the product. If you can see, something here, whether it's the people or whether it's the technology or the tools or the service themselves, that's what we really get most excited about. We say no to a lot of companies that ask us for lead gen services, not in an arrogant way. It's just because there's too much competition or the market doesn't make sense. I think the biggest thing when you look at SDRs, and this is controversial, but the number one thing you can give them, and what I mean by thing is like out of everything you can give them, the number one thing you can give them in order to be successful is a great product or service to represent. And so if we can take that, it's not the only thing, but it is definitely a foundation. If you believe in what you're selling, you're going to have a lot of success, right? Everyone knows that. So when we work with these companies and when we collaborate, when we start relationships, we really want to know and understand. And I am very much involved in those ideas and those decisions on whether or not, this is something we can see long-term having success in the market. We make the wrong bets. We partner up with companies that go out of business in a year. We're not, we don't have a magic wand, but we have had a lot more successes than not. And it's because we really collaborate with the people who are bringing it to the market.
Solid advice. Yeah, of course. Right? Of course, you can get more results if you work with the right people, right? Like that's because you're working with someone that is actually, in a way, destined to win, and that is going to win whether with you or without you, right? Or at least that's what it looks like from the outside.
And we like underdogs, right? We like underdogs. If you think about it, back in the day, again, another great ZoomInfo story, right? Discover Oregon was ZoomInfo. ZoomInfo was Discover Org. Rain King was up and running, and data.com was up and running. And this is, maybe dating some people, but at the end of the day, they were an underdog. They were not the biggest company on the street by far. And they were, overshadowed by some massive data companies. And interestingly enough, Henry bought Rain King in the process. So the company that, was the flagship company in the market, he was going after in a big way, and eventually acquired that company and many others. So long story short, we do root for the underdog, and we do feel like if they are one, we want to help support them and bring them to market even more.
Love that a lot. Would you say, now that you mentioned controversy, whatever, outbound is dead, reply rates are down, connect rates are down, acceptance rate is down? To say to that, how are you overcoming that? What is the, different approach, better data, better copy, more like multimedia, whatever, like different, like inserting video, less follow-ups, more volume, less volume, APM. There's so many options, right, to try to get outbound right. What is your advice there, I guess, or what are you seeing working the most, especially with the clients that you have?
2 words: calls and content. I mean, I know you're a huge content guy, right? And it's real simple, right? There's a lot of noise in the marketplace right now, but you just got to be super careful about who you're listening to. I mean, there's a lot of great advice and a lot of great influencers and gurus, and I'm not saying I'm on either, but I do say that everything that I say is backed by not thousands, not tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands, millions of data points that we are performing on a yearly basis, let alone, over the course of our, entire tenure. We do 11 million revenue generating activities per year. And most of that is through phone calls. And so what we have found is that email, I won't say anything is dead, because there's a lot of things you can do better and differently in every channel to make it effective. But phone has been the number one tool for us to get the right high quality appointments and leads created. And secondarily, now more than ever, video content or content creation is that social proof. I think I wrote a post yesterday or today on LinkedIn, which I post every day now. They're talking about how everyone cared about case studies and white papers after every demo. And no one cares about that anymore. Sure, they want to hear it, but at the end of the day, they're like, I want to see, I want to see on YouTube, or what are experts saying about you? Or what's your blog like? What's your newsletter like? What's your content like? That is significantly more arming for our SDRs than, sending 6, templated emails, right, that are going to spam anyway and getting deleted. So yeah, calls and content is the way in which we've been building our business. After doing this for 15 years, we've doubled in size since January, and it's October now. So it's in the last 10 months, we've doubled in size after 15 years. And it's because we are bullish on those two things, calls and content right now. Don't know what's going to look like in the next few years, but I know right now that's what it looks like today.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what am I going to say? I think content is going to stay for the next 10 years. Easy. It's not going anywhere. You doubled in size since January after 15 years in business.
That's correct. Yeah.
What was that about? How? Like, tell me like how you started the year. What were the objectives as a CEO, right? Like, what were you trying to lead? What initiatives were in the works? What was not working? And how, what steps did you take in the company to take it to where it's at right now? Like, because doubling in size in like what, it's been now 9 months fully. We're October 2nd recording this. So yeah, impressive. Yeah. Like,
thank you. And it's a collaboration of very intelligent people that we put in the same room, essentially, is what the actual short answer is. We've really stepped up our hiring game, and we brought in some amazing people into the company. We have, again, doubled down on content creation and making a splash and noise in the market. We have organic content that's being created. We do 20 posts a week on LinkedIn through our team. That's all intentional. And it's across all of our different departments. So we have partnerships that are writing content and engaging right now, which is a big initiative. So we have a referral partnership program that we launched this year that's been dramatic. We have literally leveled up our tech stack and our outreach for ourselves. We have hired some amazing growth directors who are very talented people that are great, best-in-class sales reps for our company. And we've also leveled up our recruitment. We're hiring and attracting better SDRs than we ever have been. There's close to 1 million SDRs on social media right now, and we are finding and sorting for the best reps, which retains our clients. So it's not just about attracting clients, about not losing them. And how are we doing that? Well, we're finding better SDRs so they can create more leads for our clients, which would make them more happy and keep them happy. So those are the things that we're doing. But long and short of it, I would say we're being really transparent, and we're putting ourselves out there. And, people were asking, I just had Tom Boston, who's awesome, by the way. He was just on our company call this morning. And he was talking about how he started his social media presence from 0 to 60,000. And it's interesting to hear how he did it, because he was just an SDR and started to do content. And now he's, a very popular person in sales. But at the end of the day, we're adapting that across the board. And our SDRs are being transparent, and we're being very transparent. So we don't hide anything, good, bad, and ugly. And I think that's what people want. People don't want to hear fake stuff. And in lead gen specifically, there's a lot of stigma. There's a lot of bad actors. There's a lot of people that have been burned. There's a lot of over-promising and under-delivering. And we don't want to do any of those things. And so if they see that we're real people working our asses off to try to do the best we possibly can and working with amazing companies to help us do that, I think the trust level gets them to the point where they want to do business with us. And I think that's what's working.
The trust. There you go. The trust. That's
exactly.
what always works. That's impressive though. Like, getting your team to post intentionally on LinkedIn, it's not an easy task, and it's something that a lot of startups are trying to pull off. What would be your advice there? Like, how do you get a team to intentionally post on LinkedIn consistently in a way that feels natural, in a way that feels authentic, and in a way that doesn't feel pushed, in a way that doesn't feel like an obligation? And kind of like, how do you frame it in a way that you can tell, like, hey, there's something in it for you if you do this, right? Like, this is not only because, if they're not committed enough to the company in the first place, then of course, right, like they're not going to be willing to do that. But like, I guess, of course, right, first step is getting them committed to the growth of the company, and then it will come natural to do content for it. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of friction, right, in presenting that. How did you handle that?
Sure. We did it in phases, and here's the answer. First, lead by example. So I was the first one to start doing the content, right? It wasn't, hey, go create content, right? It was like, okay, I'm going to do this first and see what the challenges are, what's the reluctance like, how simple or hard this is, and start doing it myself. So I was the first one to start creating content 2 years ago, and we hired an agency to help me do it because I had no idea what I was doing. And they were really instrumental in getting us off the ground, facilitating the call, asking me questions, helping me write and giving me some ideas. And then I started taking that over and owning it solely. Then we started bringing in others, our head of recruitment, right? Our head of partnerships, our COO, our sales team. And I said, listen, this is our diary. When you go home at the kitchen table at the end of the day and you talk about your day with your family, that's the stuff we're going to talk about. And we're going to just talk about what's happening every single day that we're dealing with on a daily basis. That is our topic. That's our strategy. And so we started doing that. And then we started to say, okay, listen, we want to have a bigger network. So we told our entire team, 100 SDRs, say, listen, we're going to put incentives to just start creating more connections. So if you start connecting with these people, we're going to be giving away prizes and giving away different types of financial incentives just to build a network. Don't create any content, just to build your network, right? Now we're approaching almost 1 million organic followers across the entire company on LinkedIn. All of our employees, you add up all their profiles with their following count. And yes, we do that. It is almost 1 million followers that we've figured all that out. So we have that going on. Then we brought in outsiders like Giulio, the cold calling expert from Italy, like Tom Boston, right, from my sales academy or the coaching sales team, right? And all of these cool people, and we're bringing them in and showing, hey, listen, these are SDRs that are creating cool brands about themselves and they're having tremendous success. So we encourage, train, and provide it. And then anyone who wants to do it, it's completely voluntary. So we're not mandating it. But anyone who wants to be an influencer that is in the SDR role, we have a channel. We enable them and we provide them some feedback, training, and tools, and that's how we have launched it. I know that's much longer answer that you're probably asking for, but that's what we've done.
If you want to go longer, please go on. To be honest, I think it's such a topic, man. I've seen it in communities. I've seen it on LinkedIn. I've seen it everywhere. There's a lot of marketers and in-house teams that are struggling to get this done, because, they are the ones trying to convince their CEO, right? You did the right thing, which is lead by example, starting creating content, like getting, how do you call it? Like against the wall, right? Going against the wall and like figuring it out. And then, of course, you can ask your team to get stuff done. But like, if you don't do it yourself first, there's no power in your words, right? Like,
yeah.
So yeah.
So another thing that I throw out there, if you want me to keep going, is podcasting, right? We're on a podcast now. I'm on your podcast, but I knew that doing a podcast and producing it ourselves, which we just launched one, by the way, last week, is a lot of time, a lot of energy, and it's hard to do. What's easier to do is be a guest on a podcast. So I worked with a booking agent to put me on podcasts. And in the last year and a half, I've been on over 65 podcasts as a guest. So, and it's been amazing, but it allowed us to have content that we can use to then create posts on. And we didn't have to, do a huge, big investment on our side to produce a podcast, right? Because we're also running a company. But now we are big enough to the point where we can bring in people to actually produce our own. But that if you're a smaller company and you're founder led, or you're a small company, you want to get content without having to build it all yourself, that is a really cool hack that you can sit on and guest podcast. I mean, Adam Robinson's doing the same thing, right? Like he's like on this content creation. He's doing a huge thing, but he all started it off with guesting as well. And it's funny, I didn't know about him until after we started doing it ourselves, but it's very similar. We are kind of doing the same stuff that he's doing, but not realizing it. And we figured it out as well. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. I had Adam on the pod, I'm sure you know, but like it's becoming more and more clear, and that you need to be like there, exerting that energy and whatnot. And that's and of course, that's why we do what we do too, right? Like in case you cannot afford a booking agent, or you don't want to bother with guest appearances or creating your own podcast, you have the guided interviews, which is private podcasting basically, right? Mm-hmm. To help you get better at video, to give you more ideas for content, to pump out that engine, to get you going, to keep it consistent more easily, so you can only spend like 1 hour recording. I'm sure you did, right? When you were doing guest appearances, You shoot for an hour, boom, there's content ideas for like a month, easy,
Yep.
right? Like if you actually extract everything from it. So
Yep.
yeah, that's definitely calls and content. That's gonna be ingrained in my brain now. It's really good. I mean, I talked to John Carson from Level Up Leads, another sales development agency. He's working with more and more mid-market and enterprises companies. And he told me the same. It's calls and content. That's what we're doubling down on, especially calls. But yeah. And I mean, what can I tell you, right? 11 million.
Well, I mean, I always say, listen, what's old is new again, but it never left us. And last year was an interesting year. I mean, it was this time last year where every single person was telling me that you are going out of business. Like every single person was telling me, you need to have an AI SDR, software and get ready to fire all your reps. Like you're not going to be in business anymore. And I frankly said, no, like I've lived through this world. I got gray hair. Like I remember when Marketo, came out and marketing automation was going to replace every SDR in the world. And we're just going to email people through an automation tool and everyone's just going to sign up for stuff. And I lived through that, and teams were being fired and, downsized, and reps were being let go left and right. And everything was being invested in marketing. And now, after that, everyone was rehired a year later when they realized that wasn't going to be the case. Now, am I saying AI is not going to absolutely change the game and what we're doing? No, it's already absolutely changing the game. Is that what's going to happen 5 years? I don't know, but I do know that I don't want to buy from an AI bot. If an AI bot called me, like I wouldn't engage, but I got cold called yesterday and I took the meeting because the guy was freaking good on the phone and I just did it out of respect alone. And actually it was a good product. So the idea of not having phone, now, is it lower connection rates? Is it hard to get a hold of people? Sure. But at the end of the day, it's like not doing it is crazy to me. These multi-billion-dollar companies still rely on 30, 40, 50% of their revenue on outbound. And people say outbound is dead. Well, I know one thing that's harder than outbound. And right now, frankly, that's inbound. And I mean, I don't care if that's controversy or not, but it's just as difficult. And to pick one or the other, in my opinion, is not the way to go. There's no silver bullet scenario like we talked about. It's the same thing. Like do both. You don't have to, spend a ton of money to do both. You can just do both at a smaller scale, but not doing both is, in my opinion, a bad idea.
I have this theory that what works now is doing everything. Low-key, like if you can just do everything, it's gonna be easier.
Just do everything, right? Like and not to knock Adam, because I know there's some controversy. Like, wasn't inbound and outbound just marketing? Well, yeah, but at the end of the day, it's intentional, and I see his point. But when he says inbound led outbound, don't forget he's also saying outbound. Right? The word outbound is in it, and everyone's thinking inbound when people hear that. But reality is like, no, you still need to do outbound. It's actually in the same sentence, right? Inbound led outbound.
The other thing that changes is the trigger is why you are reaching out. It's like off of a website visit or off of cold. Well, I mean,
100%. So it's still outbound, and outbound is hard. And my motto is do hard things. And the reality is, like, you just got to do that. Like, everyone's just looking for an automation tool to just make life easy. And I think we're just in this instant gratification TikTok generation where like everything just comes to us instantly. And, that's not the case for leads. That's not the case for new business. You got to go after, you got to work your tail off. Are there cooler, funner, better, more interesting ways to get it done? Yeah. But don't just do one of them, do all of them.
Yes, sir. Totally. Yeah, it's about being everywhere, like being omnipresent in a way, right? You mentioned being great on the phone, having a good product, building trust, etc. What does being good on the phone sound like?
Right. So words matter, right? We have a framework to every single cold call script that we design. Now, keep in mind, we have currently 92 active clients. And that is 92 different SDR teams and 92 different pitches and 92 verticals and 92 different ICPs and 92 scripts. And so when we look at it, there is a framework to it. And then we design and customize the script based on all the things I just mentioned, right? On the actual product, the ICP, the service. but there is a framework to a cold call. And the number one thing I would say to people who are making cold calls is the number one job of salesmen's, or one of the top jobs for a salesman, is to not sound like a salesman. And people are like, well, what does that mean? Like, you don't want to sound like everyone else. And so you have to change it up, and you have to be yourself, and you have to be comfortable, and you have to be natural, and you have to be authentic. I remember 10 years ago, there's a guy that every time he cold called someone, he said, how are you? Right? So, hey, Will, how are you doing today? And that's how we started his conversation. Now, a lot of people would knock that and say that's horrible because it sounds like, a lot of other sales calls. But the reality is he did it so authentically, and he was so genuine, and he actually cared about how that person was. And the way in which he started, it was so flawless. Now, if I did it, it was horrible. I would never start a cold call like that. It just would not work for me. I'm way too direct. And my opener is, hey, Will, you and I have never spoken before, but my executive team asked me to give you a call on their behalf. I have a few questions for you first. You got a minute? That is literally how I start my cold calls. If that guy, his name was Joe, did it that way, he would have crumbled and fumbled. So we do have to customize it to the person, and it has to be convincing and authentic and genuine, but there is a framework around it. And the framework is 4 P's, I call it. The peak, P-I-Q-U-E, piquing their interest, which essentially is what I just did, to get them willing to listen to you. And there's various ways to do that, but that's how I do it. The second is the pitch itself, which is the actual message of whatever it is you are talking about. And you can almost cut, copy, paste that for whatever the product is. And then the third is the promotion. So you're promoting the meeting. You're promoting the person who's going to do the meeting, which is not you. And you're handling objections and questions. And then finally is plan, which is the logistics of the meeting, setting it up, scheduling it, and making sure you're saying the right things to make that meeting show. So it's peak, pitch, promote, and plan. And that's our framework of writing a cold calling script, no matter what the vertical is. And I hope that answered your question, but that's how we do it.
Interesting. Yeah, never heard of that. I guess you guys are the only ones using it. But
well, I just designed it from years of doing it. But yeah, that's how we do it.
Love it. Love it. We talked a lot about people in this call, but I think you're running 170, if I'm not, like, how many? Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
right?
we have SDR resources that are in other clients, which is half of our team, companies like Peloton and other enterprises where our reps are sitting in their ecosystem. And then we have another 100 SDRs on our sales floor that are we're managing everything from that point of view.
Right. So a lot of people, basically. What core things on leading that many people? Because of course you don't lead them directly, all of them, but at the end of the day, you're the CEO. So how do you deal with that? I don't know if, because I've never been through that, but like, do you wake up every day and like think, oh, there's 170 people that are depending on me, like, or 170, sorry, or like, yeah, I guess any core lessons that you've made through in terms of leading people, and the one I did is just knowing that nobody's going to care about your business more than yourself, and still you got to be okay with that, and your job is to make them want to be interested, wanting to execute, wanting to grow, and having the company's best interest in mind when that might not align with theirs necessarily, which ideally it does. But you see what I mean here? Like,
I do, yeah. You have to be accessible. I have SDRs in my company that I have never met, let's say, face to face or, one-on-ones with, but they know that they can come to me with anything. And many of them, and by the way, that's very few and far between. Usually they're relatively new that I didn't meet them. But I do after the first 30 days of working here with every SDR, a meet and greet call with them. But everyone knows, I would say, listen, we have 2 huddles a week company-wide. They're 30 minutes each. I'm on both of them. And I speak on one and I don't speak on the other one. My team does that. But at the end of the day, it's like you have to be accessible to your team, and they have to know that, again, you have an open door policy. We call it an open Zoom policy. And my calendar is accessible to everyone in the company. And I encourage them to hop on a call with me to discuss whatever it is they need. Now, we also have a large layer of leaders between our sales floor and myself as well. So we really invest in our leadership, and it's a very small ratio. right? We have a 1-to-5 ratio from leadership or team lead to SDR team. And which is, again, that's pretty unique and intimate. And so we poured into those leaders and we rely a lot on them, of course. But at the end of the day, they were also SDRs either here or somewhere else. So they know the game and they're player coaches for sure. And we spend a lot of time with those individuals to help us, be the ambassador for me throughout the entire organization. So being accessible, I would say, is paramount, or at least knowing that you are accessible in the beginning is even more important. And then really investing in your team that is leading the entire sales floor is super, super important.
Love that. Yeah. 1-to-5 ratio. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to avoid the fucking bloat and what most companies end up in, right? Like it's so easy though, right?
Yeah.
To keep adding people and thinking that you need them. And then, well, we could talk about founder mode if you want, but
yeah. Well, and we're very data focused, right? So we have amazing reports and KPI and metrics tools that we're looking at constantly. We're monitoring things constantly. Everyone is, feeling like we're rowing in the same direction, if you will. And we have tools that are set up that if we see a red flag, we need to catch that before our clients do, right? So we never want to hear like, hey, this rep isn't working out for us from our client. We want to tell them, hey, this isn't working out for us to help serve you, Mr. Client. So we want to always be proactive in that regard. And so we catch it before they do. And that always helps us keep a strong relationship with our clients.
Quick question. 5 tools you use that you think most people wouldn't say that you use?
Oh, okay. Well, it's interesting. We actually don't use Slack or Teams or Google Meet.
But you do huddles.
We have Zoom chat. So Zoom chat is amazing. It's fully integrated, obviously, with Zoom video and Zoom meeting. And so it's like FaceTime. So if I call someone on my team, I just hit, call and it'll FaceTime them through Zoom, or I can add people into Zoom rooms and force people into Zoom rooms by ringing them up and literally merging them into the room. We have channels. So we use Zoom chat. It's a really robust technology and it competes directly with Teams and Slack, and we love it. And it's something that most companies don't know about or even use, which is interesting. Another thing that is Zoom powered is our Zoom waiting room has a video in it. And I've heard like probably 1 out of 4 to 1 out of 5, every call that I'm on, someone mentions it and they had no idea that existed. So it's like you're at a doctor's office, you got your TV in the waiting lobby, right? But here, when you're waiting to hop in a Zoom room, hopefully it's not too long and you're running too late. We have a really nice customer testimonial video. Henry Shook's on the video. We have all these other CEOs and founders on the video, and it talks about who we are and what we do. And it amps people up just to get into our call for a demo, almost to the point where like, I was watching that video. I was hoping to actually that you didn't start the meeting on time because they wanted to watch the rest of the video. And so that's a tool that we use that is pretty cool. You said 5, right? Do you want more?
Yeah, I'm gonna start inserting that, but yeah, one more. I want. I mean, if anything, I'm sure you don't know though, but I would love to know about all your tech stack because it looks like you have a pretty tight. You run a pretty tight ship. So yeah.
Our head of technology is the smartest guy I've ever met in my life. He's awesome. But I think, okay, so another one we use is Insightful. This one's actually kind of scary, but essentially monitors remote employees. We're fully remote. And when you have that many people remote for, activities like what we do, it's really important that we support them in ways that are, best in class. And so Insightful allows us to help, monitor their technology and monitor what they're doing. Yes, it does that. But it also provides us the ability to know if something is wrong or something is, and updating the right software and making sure the right tools are on their computer and making sure that we can remotely log in and do things and fix things when a ticket comes through. Because keeping that up, like everyone literally online, if you will, is extremely important. Our clients are paying us a premium to make sure our reps are working for them. And if we're not in their offices and working remotely, it could get very complex. So that's a tool that we use to allow us to remotely access everyone's computer and monitor in ways for them so they don't need to be tech gurus themselves in order to work here. So that's another cool tool. What is another one? Orem. We use Orem for our parallel dialing. We're a huge fan of them. also admittedly a client of ours as well. And so exciting to have that collaboration. But they have something called Zoom. They have Orem virtual sales floor. And there's other few competitors in this space that do it as well. But our reps are actually making calls in a virtual sales floor on video together. And that is amazing because it fosters collaboration, it fosters support, it fosters recognition. Doing cold calls from home is very difficult, right? And it feels like you're on an island by yourself because you are. So doing it in a way where it's collaborating with others, just to even make fun of a prospect who is mean to you or something like that. Or, we have one team where everyone has like a little, gong symbol. And when someone gets a meeting, they do it all on video and it's very fun. And so that's it's another cool tool. And I guess the last thing is just not maybe a tool, but more of an accessory for everything I just pretty much mentioned, which is video, which I think, you would like a lot. We buy everyone who works here who doesn't have one. We'll supply it if they don't already have it, a 1080p external webcam. And it is paramount that we are all on video at all times. Now, I know that may sound a little big brothery, but trust me, everyone loves it because here's the reality. We're salespeople. Most of the time, salespeople are extroverts. They don't have to be. And we have a lot of introverts that are great salespeople. And I'm a big believer in that. But seeing people like I'm seeing you right now is so important. And that interaction is so important. And body language is so important in sales. Now, if we were all web developers, if we were all accountants, if we were all programmers developing technology, frankly, I don't care. Like I used to manage a whole software division. I didn't care if they were on video or not. My sales team, they're on video. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just the nature of the role. And so we're very, very video focused because of that. And it creates a phenomenal culture to the point where, I went to my chief operating officer's wedding before I actually met her physically. So if you think about that, like I was invited to their wedding after 2 years of working together and I never even met her before. And it was all through video communication. So 98% of the people that work with us, I've never physically met, but I know what their kids' names are. I know what their hobbies are. I know what they love to do. I know, and I know what they look like. All these things are super important. So video allows us to make that happen.
Love that. That's what can I say, right? I love video.
I mean, look, where are you in the world right now? Are you in Spain, or I know you travel a lot, but where are you?
I'm in Serbia.
Serbia. Okay. So I'm in New York and you're in Serbia. We've had a few conversations already. I've seen your content. You've seen my content. I mean, I feel like I can just have a beer with you, talk to you, hang out, go to dinner, and we could go out to dinner, in Serbia tomorrow, and I would feel totally comfortable. You know what I mean? It's like that's what that does.
It really doesn't. It really doesn't. It's to me, it's a requirement at this point for every interaction you want to have online. If you're not on video, even on video, to me, it's an online interaction still, right? Like it's not nowhere near close what you can feel in real life. But if you don't have that, then you don't have anything, because only chat and whatnot. I mean, sure, for devs and even for that, because you want to screen. Well, maybe you don't need video, but you want to screen share probably, so you want to hop on a call and whatnot. But yeah, I think video is paramount, as you said. Like it needs to be there. Really good insights. I've been thinking. I think I'm gonna title this episode like something about like leadership, people, and tech or something, and outbound, right? Like something like that.
I think it'd be great.
Yeah.
Another cool tip, and I know I feel like I work for Zoom meeting, but I don't. But we do video recordings a lot. Right. So it allows you to kind of like how Loom does it, but it's all integrated with Zoom. So I can very quickly just do a video message. And if I need to address, let's say, the entire company and, getting them all off the phones at the same exact time, because we're in time zones all around the world. So there's people working at 4 a.m. all the way up till, 12 at night, depending on where we're supporting our clients around the world. So very challenging to get everyone in a room together, right? Just in itself. So I can record a video very quickly and send it out to the entire company. And even recorded videos are so important and valuable just for internal, right, communication, let alone, everything online. But I'm just saying, hey, if I want to send out an announcement or, someone got promoted or, a lot of companies just send that out on an email. Well, I do it on a video, and it's much more powerful in my opinion.
I would say you could do that on Slack, but
I know
I'll
you
explore Zoom. That's an interesting feature.
No, I know
what
you
I'm taking
can.
away for sure is the video before in the waiting room. That's golden.
Yeah,
because it increases the close rate too. Most likely, if they see a testimonial before you're hopping in, it's really good.
100%. Yeah. No, I know. I mean, again, Slack could do most of the things I just mentioned, if not all. But yeah, it just the concept of video to what you're doing and to what we're doing internally is really invaluable at this moment.
Yes, sir. To wrap up, I wanted to ask you what is kind of like, and this is by no means, I take this more as an advice in terms of how do I hire and how do I train our team. But it's going to serve you as well as publicity for Alleyoop, most likely, to recruit more people. So my question is, what is the value prop that they have for the profiles that might want to join Alleyoop to grow their career? And why is this value prop, right? I mean, I don't think we need to say why, but I considered it to be as important, if not more, as the value prop that you give to your clients, right? The value proposition as in a services company, and even in software at this point too, in every company that requires talent, which is pretty much every company, but the proposition, the value proposition, and this goes unseen a lot of times, the value proposition that you give to potential employees or members of your team or of your organization needs to be as good, if not better, than the one that you give to your clients, right?
Right.
So what is the one that you give to the profiles that want to join Alleyoop? Yeah.
Sure. So one thing we don't do anymore, and this is just for those who are interested, we don't hire, people coming out of college that have never picked up the phone before. We used to do that, right? We used to hire people because there wasn't SDRs, right? There weren't any SDRs. That was the only choice. And then they would, go through what we call Alleyoop Academy. They would graduate, and, after 3 months, they would then be assigned to a client. Unfortunately, to those individuals who are looking to start their sales career first time with us would not be a fit. And it's just because we really need people who don't have that call reluctance, who know how to handle basic call objections, who know how to, handle technology and have been able to, articulate a strong message to a prospect and have that under their experience. If you want to go somewhere else and then come back to me, 100%, right? But at the end of the day, we're looking for people, and this is to your point, we're looking for people who have maybe done customer service, who have done, a junior SDR role, or have been in an SDR role with a company that, they didn't see much vision with, or maybe went out of business or didn't have the success they were looking for, no room for growth. Those are people that would absolutely come here and thrive in massive ways. One, we are fully remote, as we talked about. So that is a big advantage. And we have zero intention of never going back to an office. We're designed for fully remote work. And we really invest and level it up. Our enablement is where we shine. Anyone could go hire an SDR. And we tell this to our clients. You can go hire an SDR and pay him commission. There's a lot of people that are looking for work, and you can go hire an SDR and pay them commission. But the reality is do they have the best technology? Do they have the best dialer? Do they have the best training? Do they have the best manager? Do they have the best data? Do they have the best email tools? Do they have all the functionality to support the actual SDR itself? That's the expensive part and the hardest part to figure out. And so that's where we shine the most. So if you look at us, we're an SDR agency, but at the end of the day, we're an SDR enablement agency. That's where we feel is the most value. And SDRs love that. It's like going in from, you can drive a Honda Civic or you can drive a Honda F1 Red Bull race car. They're both Honda engines and they're both Honda products. But driving a Honda Civic versus driving an F1 car is very, very different. And that's what we feel is we've built an F1 race car for an SDR to come in and sit in and crush. And that's what I think is a huge value prop to our reps. And then on the flip side, here's my number one thing for working here, and myself included, is if you're good, you'll have a job for life. Job security is very challenging. And it's kind of fun to go work at a startup and have an exit and be a millionaire one day because you were an SDR at that company. But realistically, that's very hard to find. And it's a big gamble many times before you hit the jackpot. And here we have companies that come to us a year later, they spent all the money that their investment firm gave them, and they fire us in the process. They go out of business. And if you were working there directly as a salesperson, you would be out of a job. Well, we have multiple scenarios. Actually, it was a company, I don't want to say their name, but they got $60 million in funding last year. They hired us. We did a phenomenal job. The CFO poorly invested the money and they fired us. And they also fired 90% of their entire company. Well, the 5 SDRs that were managing that campaign still work here today, right? Because they just were moved onto a different campaign. There's always something that needs to be sold. Everyone needs appointments and leads. So Alleyoop is not going anywhere. And the reality is if you like that idea of job security, and if you're, again, you got to be good. If you're not good, you're not going to be here. But if you're good, you can have multiple homes and learn multiple companies. And I mean, we have a rep right now who has ZoomInfo, Adobe, Outreach, SalesLoft, and Sales Intel on their resume. And they didn't leave their company. They never left this company to have that. So it's like, I don't know. You tell me. That's pretty amazing.
You tell me, right? Like, is that a good value prop or not?
I don't know.
It is, of course.
That's your resume, right? So
yeah, totally. No, it's really good. It is really good. I think as a sales rep, you gotta, if you have that opportunity to, work for a firm, because I would call you guys an agency, to be honest, that isn't touched with that level of clients. It's like, you're going to get in 2 years, you can get the same resume that would take you 15, right? Like
100%
experience working with this, and this. Boom, there you go. Like,
but on the flip side, if you don't like ever changing, if you don't like wearing a lot of hats, if you don't like, a lot of spinning a lot of plates or multitasking or changing of pace, then this wouldn't be the home. I have a friend that is an accountant and he has been working at one of the big 3 for the last 20 years. And that's been his job his entire life. He would never thrive in this environment. He'd go nuts. So if you're looking for that, I'm not saying it's a roller coaster, but it is, to your point, you're moving around and you're having all these amazing opportunities, but it's not, a monorail where it's like one company and you're doing the same thing for the rest of your life. Some people like that, and that's okay too.
Yep, totally. Well, good stuff, sir. We have ourselves a podcast here.
Cool.
It was a great session. Pleasure having you. If they want to find you, of course. I mean, we've been mentioning it for a minute.
Yeah, LinkedIn. Yeah, exactly. If you want to connect, LinkedIn, I respond to my messages. There's no bots. It's actually a human ran LinkedIn profile. But long story short, if you need anything or ask any questions or if you're interested in working or being a customer, let us know and we'll love to help you out.
Awesome. It's been a pleasure and looking forward to have you back at some point.
Thank you, Will. You're the man.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to the FounderVideo Podcast with Will Martin, and we'll see you on the next episode.